Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. We're just waiting for people to join. We've had quite a few signups, so we'll just give everyone a chance to join, and we'll be starting in a few minutes. Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today at the Global Schools Forum to hear about the Impact at Scale Labs, an initiative we're very, very excited to have launched and a really interesting new direction for our organization. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear more about it and for reading the application pack. We would like to spend our time today first doing a quick round of introductions, particularly around the GSF team, so you can put a face to our names for those that don't know us. Sadly, we don't have time to get to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself, just given how many participants we have. But we look forward to learning more about your organizations through the questions. We then will go into a quick welcome from our CEO, who will also give you a little bit of history of on GSF and the context at the stage for this initiative. Then my colleague Kieran will take you through the background for the Impact at Scale Labs and what it looks like and what the key eligibility criteria are. And then we'll save about 45 minutes for the questions and answers. To submit your questions and answers, please use the Q&A box, which is on your Zoom screen next to the participants button. It will be much easier for us to manage if you use that button as opposed to posting your questions in the chat. So would much appreciate that. We will also open the floor for some questions that you can ask straight through the Zoom, through the audio Zoom, but make sure that you raise your hand if you want to ask a question. We'll also be recording this session, and in between the and posting it online for other potential participants to look through. And in between the presentation and the Q&A, we'll also have a quick and exciting poll for you. I think this is it. And we're ready to go into the introductions. I probably should have started by introducing myself. My name is Alina, and I'm the Director for Impact and Innovation at the Global Schools Forum. Very pleased to see all of you here today. Ashti, over to you.
Thanks so much, Alina. Very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Ashti, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Global Schools Forum. Really pleased that you can join us today for this webinar on the Impact at Scale Lab. And I'm really excited to be here in particular because this is a culmination of a journey that began a couple of years ago out of conversations that we were having with external partners and with some of our members on how we can harness the innovation, the efficiency, and the agility that we were witnessing across our network of members and the wider non-state sector at large to have an impact on the wider education sector, and particularly in response to COVID. So it's been really exciting to see it come to light and for the program to take shape. For those of you new to GSF, I thought I'd just take a little, just a couple of minutes to tell you a little bit about us and provide a little bit of context on how the labs are sort of connected to our wider work. So as some of you may know, I established GSF about 5 years ago, back in January of 2017, as a global community of mission-aligned organizations that are working to improve education outcomes at scale. Habib, if you could just move the slide, that would be fab. And we work in the 4 ways that are highlighted on the screen, but I thought it might be helpful for me to just give you a little bit of example. So we design and deliver learning and provide meaningful opportunities for connection and collaboration among our network. So for example, we recently completed a really powerful community of practice on foundational literacy and numeracy, which has resulted in a practice note that we'll be sharing with the wider education community. We generate and disseminate evidence. So a few months ago, in partnership with the Education Development Trust, we conducted research into the impact of COVID-19 on the non-state sector. We engage in strategic policy conversations and dialogue, mostly at the global level. So for instance, we engaged meaningfully in the design and development of the Global Education Monitoring Report, which some of you may know this year was focused on the non-state sector. And finally, through the Impact at Scales Lab, we provide funding and coaching to scale innovations in partnership with government. And so I've been talking about our network. So our network is growing, but currently includes 66 organizations that work in partnership with communities and governments across 51 countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. These 66 organizations run or support over 30,000 schools, providing schooling to 5 million children. And our work and that of our members is united in the belief that all children in low and middle income countries, and indeed all children all around the world, have safe and equitable access to quality education. We are at a really exciting point in our journey, as Alina mentioned. We're in the process of developing a new 3-year strategy. We've expanded our talented global team, some of the faces that you see on the screen today. We've recently strengthened our board of trustees to help us grow our reach and deepen the impact of the work that we do. Particularly in partnership with governments, so that we can work together to help solve some of the challenges facing global education today. So with that, let me thank you again, and let me thank the Impact and Innovation team and the GSF team that have helped to both design and get us to this point today, and really looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Ashti.
Thank you so much, Ashti. I wanted to move us back to the previous slide to finalize the round of introductions with this hardworking team that worked on designing this program. Angie, over to you, and Habib, Kavita, Kieran, Purnima, Ross, please introduce yourselves.
Sure, thank you very much. I'm Angie, and I'm the Impact Innovation Senior Associate working on the Monitor, Evaluation, and Learning part of the labs. Nice to meet you all.
Hi, I'm Habib. I also work as Impact and Innovation Manager at GSF. I look forward to your applications.
Hi everyone, I'm Kavita. I'm the Program Director at GSF, looking after learning and development. Excited to see all of your applications come through.
Hi everyone, my name's Kieran. I'm the Senior Impact and Innovation Manager, so working with all these lovely people to deliver the Impact at Scale Labs. I'm very much looking forward to your applications.
Hi, I'm Purnima. I work as the Impact and Innovation Manager at GSF, and I look forward to interacting with some of you.
Hi, I'm Ross. I'm the Policy and Research Associate here at GSF, and it's great to see so many people on the call.
Over to you, Karen.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alina. So I guess we wanted to give you a bit of an overview of why we chose to sort of build out the Impact at Scale Labs. And this very much comes from our vision and mission. So our vision and mission is very much aligned with SDG 4, which is to provide access to quality education for all children so that they can reach their potential. And we've seen across the world lots of interesting innovations trying to sort of reach this goal. But these innovations tend to be on a smaller scale. And considering the time limit we have achieving SDG goals by 2030, and the fact that COVID-19 has put a massive spanner in the works, the UN saying that we've been set back by approximately 20 years, there is a real sort of urgency amongst the education sort of space, looking at how we can accelerate interesting innovation and how we could potentially achieve SDG 4 by 2030. So lots of organizations are talking about scale. So researchers, governments, multinational organizations are all starting to consider scale. However, scale is fairly difficult to achieve. So Brookings has done plenty of research into sort of why education innovations aren't really scaling, and they've sort of pinpointed 3 core problems. The first is there's just generally a lack of support and ecosystem buy-in to help innovations cross through crucial stages. And when we talk about support, we talk about funding and guidance, as well as just general sort of players coming together to support one another to get these innovations through these crucial stages. Secondly, there are large gaps in the evidence when it comes to scaling education. So, as I said before, there are plenty of innovators across the world doing incredible things, but no one is really collecting data on this. And this data is then not being shared. And the reason it's not being shared is because there's very few platforms to share this evidence. So no one's really learning from each other's successes and failures, and that the opportunity to replicate and adapt interesting innovations isn't quite there. So essentially, we developed the Impact at Scale Labs as a solution to these problems. And our first lab will be focused on sort of learning recovery from COVID-19. So, as we all know, it's been a tough road, sort of getting everybody back to school and ensuring that the kids that have lost immense amounts of learning are brought up to speed again. This is particularly detrimental for marginal groups such as girls or kids in rural areas, etc. So there's a real sort of need to try to figure out how we can change what the learning losses that have occurred. So learning losses have occurred across schools, across the world, across subject areas. And it's very difficult to think about, like, where do we start? So we've done a lot of research to think about where exactly we could start. And we've identified sort of 3 precursors to effective learning, and we call these our learning levers. So lots and lots of research, lots of researchers have pointed to these 3 precursors and have said these are the kind of areas that we really need to focus on when it comes to learning recovery. And these 3 areas are teacher effectiveness, learner preparedness, engagement, and technology. So we are looking for innovations that fit under one of these 3 categories. So you'll find in the application pack, we've written quite extensively about these 3 areas, but I'll quickly just give you an idea of what we're thinking when it comes to innovation under these 3 areas. So with teacher effectiveness, we're looking at sort of student-centered teaching approaches and techniques, things like teaching at the right level, for example, any sort of teacher training. If it is teacher training, it must demonstrate sort of very clear evidence of benefits for the students. Secondly, sort of learner preparedness and engagement. Yes, we are looking at fundamental skills, and generally when we talk about learning loss, fundamental skills is the one key area that people tend to focus on, but we sort of want to go beyond that because we recognize that learning loss has occurred not just in sort of maths and literacy, but also the wider subject areas. Therefore, we are also looking for innovations tackling sort of 21st century skills. So this includes sort of socio-emotional learning and also digital skills. And as usual with any sort of innovation program, student-centered approaches are very, very much welcome. And anything that perhaps looks at bringing in parents into the mix and involving them in student study. Finally, technology. So we are very, very adamant that technology is a facilitator of learning. It will not replace a teacher. And we strongly believe that. So we are looking for technologies that facilitate and enhance learning. We're also looking for technological innovations that perhaps motivate sort of seamless participation from parents and other key stakeholders. So very much looking around the stakeholders involved in children's learning, in students' learning, and how they can sort of get involved. So Angie, who has put this wonderful, or our wonderful learning levers together, is on the call today. So if you have any particular questions about these, Angie will be happy to answer them. I thought it might be nice as well just to kind of talk through the program. It is quite a long program, as you must have all read through the application pack. So I thought it might be nice for someone to give you an overview of what we're thinking in terms of how it's going to work. So this is fairly complicated slide with lots and lots of information. So I'm going to direct you to these sort of 4 chevrons, these 4 blue chevrons in the middle. And I'll talk through these first, and then I'll discuss the orange sections above afterward. So we've got 4 main phases. The first is selection, which you're all currently in. And this consists of 2 phases. So the application phase and then the interview phase. So in the application phase, you will write out a proposal and submit that by April 4th. And then we will take a shortlisted number, so approximately 10 individuals, 10 organizations, should I say, to the next round, which will be the interview phase. And in this phase, we will prepare the various organizations with workshops and a bit of coaching for this interview. And this interview essentially will look at the sort of the innovation's feasibility. Has it got the potential to scale? So that's the kind of key question we want to answer. Once we've completed that phase, the lucky 3 organizations will then move into phase 2, which is design and strategy. And you can see I've written here 1 to 5 months. So we recognize that different organizations have different schedules, different capacity, different needs. And so we're very much wanting to create a program that is tailored to the individual's needs. And so in that selection phase, we'll be watching people very, very carefully and looking at what exactly they need, and then design the appropriate sort of program for them in this design and strategy phase, and help them to build out a strategy for scale and a strategy for evidence. Once that's been completed and you've met the milestones required, you move on into phase 3, which is essentially implementing that strategy, working on key iterations, and sort of sharing core evidence. One thing that's very, very important to GSF is that we really want to learn from your innovations, from what you're doing, and build out case studies that we can then share with the wider education community. So that will take approximately 12 months. I'll talk about this in a bit more detail in the following slides. I don't want to throw too much information at you now. Then the final stage is phase 4, where you've had an opportunity to go and sort of implement your strategies. And now we want to think about what's gone well, what can we do better, what can we get rid of? Is this the appropriate scaling path for us, or do we need to switch gears? So just kind of a reevaluation, and again, we'll be sort of collecting evidence to build out those case studies. So throughout sort of the second part of phase 1, in phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4, you will have access to GSF coaches, mentors, so individuals that are perhaps 2 or 3 steps ahead of you and can provide you with some advice around which sort of direction to take, and experts. So these will be sort of content experts who perhaps you have an ed tech you're exploring and need to understand something a bit more detailed, then we will connect you with the right experts. But these experts will range from sort of technical experts to individuals that have particular expertise in scale or strategy. So from phase 2 to phase 4, you will have access to the GSF platform. So everybody who will be a participant of the Impact at Scale Labs will also be a member of the GSF community. So you will have access to our incredible members, and there will be plenty of opportunity for peer-to-peer learning and potentially some horizontal scaling. I'll explain what horizontal scaling means in a bit more detail if you need me to. Ecosystem engagement. So what we mean by this is that we're very, very keen to engage the wider education ecosystem in what you're doing. Scale doesn't happen in a vacuum. It needs multiple individuals to support this. So we are going to try to sort of build the right communities to help you to achieve that scale. And as I said, along from phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4, we'll be doing some fairly rigorous evidence collection, and that will be on the scaling process, the innovation's impact overall, and the scaling route. Okay, so if we look at sort of the second phase in a bit more detail, I just want to give you a bit of an idea around the content we'll be covering. The first thing that we're going to do is sort of understand the innovation in a little bit more detail, as well as your context. So pre any sort of strategy, it's important that we have these sort of this foundational piece, which is understanding the context, not just from the internal aspect, so not just what's happening within your organization, but the external, so the political, the geographical, etc. So having a good ground understanding of context, and then from that, we can go ahead and sort of build out an appropriate scale strategy, as well as an evidence strategy. So each milestone that you meet will mean that you will then get access to a review committee. And this review committee will consist of funders, perhaps some government representatives. You may have noticed that part of the application process means you have to outline any partnerships that you have with government, private sector, etc. And we will bring them together in a session and sort of facilitate conversation. So an opportunity for you to tell everybody what you're doing, get some feedback from different sectors, etc. And they can sort of help you to problem solve and perhaps open doors by introducing you to interesting people. So these reviews will be held sort of every month up until you are ready to sort of put your final strategy together, where you'll have your final review. And if everybody's okay with that, you will move on to the next stage, which is phase 3. So, as I said before, phase 3 is 12 months long, and this is the opportunity to implement your strategy. So GSF coaches will still be around, will still be there for you, but it will be then your opportunity. You will then reach out to us when you need us. So it won't be so structured like it was before. It will be a little bit more hands-off from a kind of GSF coaching perspective, you will be expected to reach out to us when you need us. If you need access to your mentors, etc., again, we will facilitate that, but it's all going to be sort of you reaching out to us. We're not going to have like standard sort of structured workshops and sessions, etc., like we would have in phase one. It's just up to you to reach out to us, but we will have sort of opportunities for interesting guest speakers coming in and having and providing talks, etc. And you will still have your connection to mentors, etc. I think the heavier piece here starts to be sort of the evidence collection piece. So we'll be sort of stepping up a little bit on that particular component. And as a GSF member, you will have access to sort of the member offer and any sort of communities of practice. Once you've had that opportunity, as I said, to implement over those 12 months, the final 12 months is that reevaluating. So there'll be a meeting to see how you've done over that year, and then sort of re-strategize and think about what comes next. And you'll do that with your GSF coaches. And again, you'll still have access to the GSF sort of member offer, any communities of practice, etc. And the M&E support will still be in place there. Okay, so as I said before, monitoring and evaluation is incredibly important to us. And this is primarily because we want to fill the void of evidence around how, why, and where education innovations work and adapt to positively affect learning. So the structure in which we have developed to be able to do this is that each participating organization will have to have an internal M&E partner, so somebody who is responsible for that M&E strategy, and they will work closely with our external M&E partner, and this individual will sort of collect all the evidence impartially and sort of help to inform iterations for the innovation or the strategy itself, but also sort of collecting evidence so we can build out these larger case studies. In addition to that, we will be providing training on monitoring evaluation, so sort of self-reflection, learning processes as required. And we will also be providing some pre-developed tools that our wonderful Angie is coming up with. So various sort of outputs and outcomes matrices, as well as learning assessments to support you to track your the learning progress. So in terms of the types of innovations that are eligible, I've had lots of questions about this already, so just want to sort of clarify that solutions must be a new product or technology or service or process, can even be a concept. It can be a combination as well. I've seen somebody ask if we can have a combination. So yes, it can be a combination. We're not looking at any sort of marketing innovations or perhaps financial modeling innovations. We're looking for products, services, or concepts that can directly provide support to students to improve learning outcomes. They need to be at the post proof of concept stage. And what I mean by this is that you've tested it out, perhaps it's in a classroom or 2 classrooms, but you've done it for perhaps 6 to 12 months, and there's actual proof and evidence that this is helping to improve general learning outcomes. Obviously, we want to work to mitigate COVID-19 learning loss through sort of improving teacher effectiveness, improving learner preparedness, or introducing a more effective technology. Students must be the primary beneficiaries. And students, we prefer the students are the main users, but also we appreciate that if it's a teacher training project, then obviously teachers can be the users, but you must demonstrate evidence of how this is supporting the students. And we also welcome innovations that are not necessarily revenue generating. So this impact is key for us. If it's generating revenue, excellent. We're happy to look at that, but impact is key. In terms of the organization, sorry about that. In terms of the organization, anyone that's coming onto the Impact at Scale Labs must also be a GSF member or willing to become one. So Kavita is here as well, and she can tell you a little bit about what membership entails if you have any particular questions. You must operate in one of our eligible countries. There's a list of all the countries within the application pack, so please do have a look. You must be able to commit a project leader and an internal M&E partner. So not just one person, we can't take on just one person. We're asking for organizations to bring on two. And you must be willing to commit to having an external M&E partner, which we will organize. And you must be a school network or intermediary organization working with low fee ECE primary or secondary students. And I know there's been a few questions around intermediary organizations or school support organizations. So these organizations provide core services to non-state schools. They can support with implementation or perhaps direct delivery. And they provide sort of resources, tools, networks, and some support material for improved education quality. That can also provide other core developmental services. So helping with sort of strategy for expansion or any sort of planning. So if you're unclear around whether or not you sit in an intermediary, just come and ask and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Okay, I'm going to hand over back to Alina for the Q&A.
Thanks very much, Kieran. I've had, before we go into the Q&A, I think we have a poll that we wanted to put to the participants for this webinar. I think, Habib, you are ready with it, right? I've also done my best to answer some questions that came into the Q&A box before, as Kieran was speaking, but please do ask any additional questions that have come up through the presentation here, and I will direct them to participants. We already have a few coming through. So the first question is with regard to eligible innovations. What if the new innovation has not been implemented for 6 months? Is there consideration for innovations being tried for less time? And since the deadline for this process is soon, there will not be ample time to meet this criteria and submit an application. And Kieran, I see, is already typing an answer, but maybe Kieran, you can speak to this question because I think it's an important one for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, sorry about that. I know I used 6 months as an example. It doesn't have to be 6 months. What's important to us is, have you tested it? And have you got some evidence that it works? So that is far more important than the actual time.
Two questions also on whether organizations can be working in government schools, or can the project focus on government or public schools, or does it have to focus on fee-paying private schools? A tough question. I might give Kavita the chance to have a go at it.
Sure, happy to. So I think currently the GSF membership works with non-state schools, so low-cost, low-fee private schools, or through public-private partnership models in the countries that they work in. So the types of schools that we work in, you can be low-cost, low-fee, you can be a community school, you can be a PPP model, you can, you can be a completely online version. So our members typically will, if you're doing both, I think that's fine, but we also definitely look at governments as a partner to scale. So if your innovation is being tested in a government school, but can also be used in the non-state schooling sector, I think we can look at the innovation.
Another question for you, Kavita, while we have you. How does one become a member of GSF? And we also have a few other questions that came in through the form that are along the same lines. What does it mean to be a member of the GSF community, and what are the obligations? So I think it's good to provide people with an overview of membership.
Yeah, happy to do that. So for anyone who is already a GSF member, when you submit your application, we look at your innovation. But if you're not a GSF member currently, we also will evaluate your application as a membership application through the Impact at Scale Lab. So it's not two separate processes. The way it typically works is we do look for organizations that are either schools or school networks, or as Kiran mentioned, are intermediary or support organizations working with non-state schools across Africa, South Asia, and Latin America. Currently, we don't have a fee model for membership, but it is something we are looking at over the next few years. But in terms of what it entails to be a member and to engage with the community, one, we are looking for organizations that are mission aligned. We are expecting that organizations will have child safeguarding and protection policies in place. We do expect that you work across the ECE or the primary, secondary schooling level. GSF is essentially a learning community. So if you're joining the membership, you're in some sense agreeing to be a part of this network that really learns, collaborates, and shares with each other. GSF has a variety of member benefits. So we do learning and development offers through the year for all of our members. This can be on organizational effectiveness. This can be on how you deliver curriculum content learning to your students a lot better. You'll have access to all of GSF's policy work. We do engage at the global policy level to support the non-state sector. And you're obviously, all of the knowledge and evidence that GSF generates is open to our members, and any other innovation work that we do is also open to our members. Members engage differently depending on how much capacity you have internally within the team. So we have members that participate in some of the learning offers, but not all. We have others that reach out to GSF for support as they require. But really, I think at the core of it is thinking about how we can collectively learn and collaborate to improve the sector as a whole. And that's really what GSF membership entails.
One more question on membership before we move on to Angie for M&E. Can organizations be working in community centers rather than low-fee private schools?
So I'm assuming if you're, because I don't know specifically the organization that's asked this question, but if you are providing core education services through a community center, I think that's completely fine. We know that in a lot of countries, a lot of communities, organizations work within the community because it's easier for children to access education. So as long as it's core service, as long as it's core education provision within the community, I think that's fine. And we're happy to look at that for membership.
And to finalize on this, membership does not have a cost. I think there's a question on that in the chat as well. There's quite a few questions on monitoring and evaluation. One is the external research, I guess, what are the criteria for the M&E partner? And then more specifically, is it organized by GSF across all 3 successful programs, or is it specific to each program? And does the organization work with GSF to select the external research partner? This is a question that Angie is well positioned to answer.
So, thank you. Well, about the requirements for the M&E partner, well, we have to make a clear distinction between the internal M&E partner and the external M&E partner. Each organization should select one member within their own organization to be the internal M&E partner. It would be awesome if this internal M&E partner is somebody that is already, you know, a monitoring evaluation adept that is working with the statistics within your own organization. But if that is not the case, please don't worry. We are providing that training once you are selected, the guidance, the tools that you need to embed within your organization, the processes of self-reflection about your innovation, how you can move forward, how you can make sure you are reaching the expected impact, and you are making the decisions on the right time. That will be, you know, the main task of the internal M&E partner. So about external M&E partner, as we are aiming to have this impartial information for each of the innovations we are supporting and for our own process, we will be selecting that, but we are open if you have any, you know, suggestion about somebody you have already worked and is an M&E expert, because maybe you have an organization that has already done some sort of impact evaluation or analysis. So we will be open to that option. And also we have a question here about if the M&E strategy is already, you know, covered by the grant we are provided to the successful participants. And yes, that's why we are reserving, you know, on a case-on-case basis, one part of the grant for the M&E strategy. It is also important to mention that each we will develop a specific monitoring, evaluation, and learning strategy for each of the organizations, because we know you have different types of organization. Maybe you are targeting different types or educational levels with different approaches. So yes, everything is going to be tailor-made. I think those were all the questions until now on the M&E side, but I'm quite open to respond any other question.
That I think is it covers all of the questions that have been asked on M&E. There's an interesting question on scaling. Should a project be selected and run its course, how could we, the school and GSF, coordinate with regulatory bodies to scale implementation to other schools? Kieran, I see you're already typing an answer, but I think it's a relevant question for everyone, and I'm happy to jump in as well.
Yeah, so I guess just a key thing to remember is that whilst you're submitting all your documents, etc., one of the things that we do ask that you submit is a demonstration that you have various stakeholders, be it sort of government representatives, be it private sector implementers that you currently have connections with and that you're working with, because that will aid the general process overall as we're thinking about scale. So the objective of that sort of first phase is to understand, you know, what type of scale are you ready for? And obviously we're looking at 4 different types of scale, which will become much clearer to you as you join the program. But the kind of 4 different areas we're looking at is vertical, horizontal, functional, and your kind of standard scale. So we first need to establish which one is appropriate for you based on your context, the context where you're in and your networks. And if you are thinking about sort of cross-regional, sort of more vertical scale, etc., if you have the right sort of network in place, then we will sort of facilitate conversations to help you to achieve that scale. But it is very much dependent on the resources that you have and what we're able to do. So if you're thinking that, you know, you're not in that position yet, in terms of you don't have that stakeholder network, we can sort of brainstorm and think about how you build that over the time in the program, and then help you to sort of think about how you go about that. But I wouldn't say that, you know, we're going to give you all the right connections, etc., within the sort of 2.5 year program to be able to do that. It's very much we're helping you figure out where are the holes? What do you need to do, and how can we facilitate any progress? I hope that answered the question. Alina, jump in if you need.
I think you've covered it really well. There's another question on eligibility for organizations that are working on early learning as one of its focus areas, in addition to other areas of health and nutrition. Are they eligible, or should they be purely working in the learning and education sector? We are open to organizations that work in various sectors, but as Kieran mentioned before, the primary beneficiary of this innovation should be students or children of school-going age, even if they are out of school. So it has to have, the intervention, the innovation itself has to have a primary education focus, but that doesn't necessarily dismiss, if it's an integrated innovation that brings in other areas that are integral to learning, then that can also be considered. The key is to promote learning recovery and improvements in learning outcomes. Lots of questions from Indian organizations on the registration, which Kavita is dutifully answering in the chat, and we'll also post some of the most common. So we will create a commonly asked FAQ document that we will share with everyone. So don't worry about that. Another question on and several questions on eligibility. How can an INGO that runs in various countries apply from their separate local country branches? I think you just need to select an entity that would be responsible for the project and that is comfortable becoming a GSF member. Currently, with INGOs, we have a combination of either the head office being a member of GSF or the separate specific country branch being a member. So it is up to you. The other question is, we currently work with local zonal education authorities in improving the quality of education in government schools. From my understanding, we therefore may not be eligible to apply for the impact labs. However, if we were to propose a program that works with the remote communities that we work in, that may be fine. And I think the answer to that is yes. But Kavita, please also jump in here on eligibility.
Sorry, Alina, I was responding to questions and I missed what I'm supposed to respond to.
So if an organization primarily works with local zonal education authorities, but is planning to propose a program that works with remote communities, would they be eligible to apply?
I think so. I'm assuming you have some kind of partnership with the local zonal authorities, and if you are definitely looking at expanding into the non-state sector, I think we will definitely be happy to consider that for membership.
Thank you. Can we give an example of what constitutes learning recovery? Is this referring to any learning that is taking place beyond the traditional classroom hours or curriculum in a specific country? So the answer to that is yes. I think learning recovery doesn't need to necessarily refer to the curriculum or to the traditional classroom hours. However, we should be able to measure it using some kind of standardized assessment or an approximation, like a simple learning assessment. But the simplest example would be ACER, but ideally something a little bit more sophisticated to try to understand if children are actually progressing against some core competencies in literacy or numeracy. I think most of the other questions in the chat we can respond through the type chat option. However, I would like to open the floor for some questions. We'd love to hear your voices and not be talking at you for so long. If anyone has a question that they would like to ask to the floor, please could you raise your hand and I will unmute. Kieran, I think you are able to unmute. We have a question from Children in Freedom Schools.
Hello, you can hear me?
We can, yes.
Yeah, okay, so thank you for this information. I just need some clarification. So you seem to be targeting organizations that are working with children, or at least the beneficiaries are from a disadvantaged background. However, if someone is doing really innovative work that would benefit all, whether disadvantaged, regardless of class, but it's something that is beneficial from all African children, would that still be viable to apply for this? I just need clarity on that. Thank you.
Do you mean if, thank you very much. Do you mean if the innovation is not exclusively targeted at disadvantaged children, but has a broader remit?
Yes.
I think that is okay from our perspective, as long as it definitely serves to improve learning for the most disadvantaged as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
A question from Simon Kieran.
Hi, Alina. Thanks very much. Can you hear me? Great. Yeah, just a quick question. If two organizations apply together, how would the process look or differ? No, that was it.
Thank you. Kieran, do you want to answer that?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, we're totally welcoming organizations to apply together. Definitely think that supports a good foundation for scale. In terms of what that would look like, one organization would be the lead organization who we would directly work with. So sort of funding, etc., would be distributed to that organization, and they would then be responsible for sort of building out contracts, etc., to ensure there's you know, a fair, equitable, etc., understanding between the various organizations. We would like that any organizations that we work with have to be members. So if there is an additional organization that wants to come on as a partner, etc., they would have to sort of qualify as members and meet sort of key criterion in order for us to be sort of happy. The one thing that we would request from any sort of additional organizations is just an understanding of their sort of SMT team. So just kind of we'd need the core CV. So when we ask for those CVs in that first round of applications, in that application pack, we would require CVs of the individuals from that additional organization. I can give you a lot more sort of detail, etc., perhaps in an email, Simon, if that's preferable.
That was really helpful. Thanks so much.
No worries.
A question from Insaf and then Diana.
Good afternoon, everyone. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I just need some clarification about our eligibility to apply or not. So we are a group of researchers from the Institute of Educational Sciences, and we actually work with the government, with the Ministry of Education in Morocco, to evaluate the impacts of COVID-19 in rural schools. So now that we know the impacts and we know all the problem, the next step is that we have a solution for them. We have an innovative solution for the rural school. And I don't know if we have the right to apply or not, since we are an institute, but we, as I said, we work with the Ministry of Education and we have access to rural schools. Are we eligible or not? Thank you.
Kieran, over to you.
I'm getting the idea that you're a research institute and you're sort of thinking, you're very in that very sort of early stages of innovation where you're sort of researching, thinking, but not necessarily implementing. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's a little too early for us. So we're looking at organizations that have already started implementing, that have, you know, have got some evidence that something is working. So you are in that kind of category a step before what we're looking for. So I would suggest perhaps just keeping an eye out for future impact at scale labs.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.
And a question from Diana as well.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm Diana from the ICAL Foundation from Colombia. I'm just curious about something. I see many organizations of the different parts of the world, but not many from Latin America. So I would like to know if you have like any recent experience with organizations here in Latin America, and if we have options to develop a work together with your organization as we're here in this part of the world. Thank you so much.
Over to you, Kavita, Angie, Habib.
I can take that. Hi, Diana. Thanks for that question. We do have GSF members in Latin America. It is a smaller number, but we are actively looking at how we can work with organizations there, including thinking about supporting in local languages, because we know that is something that is necessary. So we'd love to think about how we can work with you. My email is in the chat. So if you drop us a line, we're happy to see, we're happy to chat further.
Thank you so much. My connection is not working well. Sorry.
We're always very excited to hear from members in Latin America. I don't see many more unanswered questions or raised hands. So I think we are ready to close, I wanted to thank you very much for taking the time to attend this webinar today. Please remember to fill out the poll that Habib shared, and we will also circulate all of the detailed responses to the questions and group them by theme for you. And we'll also post this recording and share the slides with the registered participants to the webinar, as well as put it in the public domain on our website. There's also a few email addresses that we've shared. Please feel free to kind of reach out to us with any specific questions that you have. And we'll also look into scheduling maybe some mini sessions or surgeries as you're working through your applications to support you with any questions you might have along the way. We are incredibly excited to have launched this and about the interest that exists, and we'll really look forward to reviewing the applications that you submit and working alongside you in that process.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a lovely afternoon.